So what title did we give for tonight's talk?
Sovereignty and ego.
Sovereignty. What does sovereignty mean? Does anyone know what sovereign means?
Separate,
Pardon me?
separate,
Maybe.
a kingdom,
Yeah, like a kingdom, like sovereign.
sovereign.
Some kind
Right,
of
so-
situation that is all by itself. So, an ego is something that is what? What is ego?
Imaginary.
Okay. What else? What other kind of ideas around ego?
Separation.
Separation, lots of little parts, all vying for what? Control. And you'll notice, if you want to know what your ego is, you'll notice how whomever you talk to, you will feel different. You talk to your friends, your ego feels pretty fluffy, pretty nice. Feel good. My homies, is that what they call homeboys, homegirls? On my people. I'm with my people. Yeah. It's like, I have friends who said that recently. I've got a lot of friends. Don't mention his name. But ego seems to need the support of lots of different advertisements, lots of different things that affirm I am somebody, I do something, I know something, I have a good background, I have a good education. Have you ever noticed, or have you noticed, even once in a while, that no matter how many credentials you have, no matter how many friends you have, no matter how many things there are to fluff you up, you feel like crap? Not always, of course. There are times when that fluffing works really well. We just don't feel good. We don't like it. We don't like what we're doing. We don't like what's even the really nice, supportive, friendly situations are kind of aggravating because they don't seem to get in there and smooth out the rough stuff that's arising. And quite often when that happens, when we have a bunch of rough stuff, parts of our ego that are so discontinuous are starting to crack and come apart. Quite often we want to find out, why is that happening? Why is that happening? And what we look for is a reason. Sometimes it's called blame. Who can we blame for this? Blame our upbringing, blame our relationships, blame our job, blame. It's because of this, because of that, because of this, because of that. And it may have a little bit to do with that, but quite often it's just that the situation is already having difficulty, and apparent outside situations come along and trigger that. Because everything is dependently arisen, you can't really get away from some kind of a trigger or some kind of interaction. The best interaction with anyone is what? What?
Listening.
That's not bad. I would say cooperation. You notice how I chuckle?
Communication.
Huh?
Communication.
No, communication, cooperation,
Yeah.
compassion, tuning into whatever's there, communicate. Is this what I'm hearing you say? No, I'm not saying that. It sounds like it. No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, let me fine tune it. So we have a conversation about it. We talk back and forth. And just instead of when somebody says something, we just go, and we split. And then we have our idea about what just happened. I rarely meet somebody who doesn't do that once in a while right in front of me. I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. I won't do this. So what does that have to do with sovereignty? Well, it seems, very simply put, that when all of this pushing and pulling and warfare and artificiality and false identity comes apart, if you actually can let it come apart and let it completely collapse, there isn't anything happening. And that nothing happening isn't necessarily an absence. It is miraculously, it is a presence, but it is a presence without a center. It is a presence without particular qualities in the same way that ego has qualities or self-centeredness. It's you could say it's an actual identity, which is what? Not separate. Sometimes we call it, in our tradition, we call it Buddha nature, or awakened nature. Your true nature is, you could say, below the surface. I think it's interesting, if I'm sure you can all relate to what I'm about to say here, is have you noticed how from when you were very young, some people just are very easygoing, don't really have a problem with too much, get along with everybody, don't have a really strong, aren't particularly self-centered. And then other people are just upset with everything. They don't have, you might be 9 years old and they might be 8.5, and you're doing okay. And this other person you know is just really upset about everything. And they're blaming this and blaming that and complaining. And then you might have another friend who you actually go to for help because this person seems to be able to listen really well. We all have some friend when we were young, that some person probably, but maybe you don't, that we could actually always talk to, that always understood, or at least they seem to. They would say, I see what you mean, or I understand, or I feel like that too sometimes. So the practice of meditation and sitting down and getting to know yourself by holding really still and watching the way you keep objecting to things, having an issue with this, a problem with that, you don't like this, you don't like that, constant turmoil about blaming, trying to find out who's wrong, who's right, who's wrong, who caused this, who caused that. I'm having this feeling and it's because of that. And the interesting thing about that is that even if you see that, you can't even stop doing that. And I'm not here to tell you to stop or start doing anything. The only thing I'll tell you to do, if you give me permission, is meditate. Hold still, find out who you are. It's that simple. Hold still a lot, not just once in a while. Hold still and slowly, because what you're doing is you're approximating or simulating not doing anything. And it seems necessary to not do anything in order to see what is actually laying behind everything. If you're busy moving this way or that, or adding or subtracting, and or trying to figure something out based on just trying to shuffle around and swapping opinions with yourself or with others, it just seems to cloud the water, and it just seems to be circular. We go round and round and round. This doesn't mean that you can't actually look at things closely and begin to sort them out or see the way things are structured. In our tradition, we have lots of structures. The five skandhas, the five skandhas are the parts that seem to make up the apparent discontinuous identity we call ego. Form, feelings, perception, concepts or sounds, sights, blue carpeting, white wall, knocking sound, thoughts, form, feeling, perception, concepts, the names of all those things. And then to complicate things even further, we have to break it down into the six sense fields and the objects that arise in those sense fields. And that all is all strung together in such a way that it, even though it's discontinuous, feels like we are somebody, feels like we're somebody that that is an ongoing person who has ideas, feelings, can be right, can be wrong, can be in danger, can be safe. So the path of meditation, the path of awareness is a structure, an exercise. In our situation, it's called a spiritual path because it actually takes you beyond just feeling better, takes you beyond just having a good day, takes you beyond that, takes you actually so far beyond that you even death does not frighten you anymore, because your understanding actually goes beyond that common duality of life and death. So it's interesting way of saying it, that you can't actually find your original face. You can't actually find your Buddha nature. If you search for your Buddha nature, you'll go in circles. It's more like if you can see through looking this way, looking that way, pushing on this, pulling on that, stopping this, starting this, if you can see that it might be a good idea to just not do anything, just hold still and see what and observe what is already the case, what's already there, then there's a possibility of seeing what your true nature actually is, that it's sovereign, that it can't be, it can be covered up, it can be confused, it can be, we can be deceived because we buy into this being right and that being wrong, or this being true, or we buy into something that's fearful and we try to run the other way. And so, we have to use some kind of concepts in order to convey what this teaching is about. I'm sitting up here presuming to know something about this. And if I didn't feel like I had something to say about it, I would not get up here and just rattle off a bunch of things I'd learned. So it's not something that you can get in the conventional sense that you didn't have something, now you have it. It's more like you see that you've always had it through your awareness practice, through looking at this and looking at this go and that come and that go. You're completely ignoring who you really are, not separate. And when you discover it, I like to say it this way: you're grandfathered in, you're grandmothered in. Your realization goes back to as far back as you can remember. You realize that you've always known this, and you've spent just about every moment of your waking life ignoring it, wanting to fight with this, wanting to convince that, wanting to make sure this doesn't go away, wanting to get more of this. Passion, aggression, ignorance, passion, aggression, ignorance. The three poisons continually drumming up ideas and beliefs and opinions and swapping things back and forth. We see it on television. We see it all the time. It's just a constant churning of junk. Sometimes a teaching device or a phrase that's sometimes used is that the Buddha, the one who has realized that you are not separate from, the Buddha is in the palm of your hand. You already have what you're looking for, you already have. Don't give up the search. Because anytime you look somewhere else, you're not looking what you already have. This is why the practice of meditation is so incredibly valuable. If you'll just do it. Ego does not want to do that because it's difficult, painful, doesn't produce the kind of results that ego is looking for, like how great I am, how successful I am. In fact, and in fiction, it could even produce results that are difficult or painful. That can actually frighten you away from that practice. You think, well, I'm not going to meditate. When I meditate, I start to have bad dreams. I start to get nervous. I can't digest my food. I can't sleep. Or that's all I do is sleep. Every time I meditate, boom, I fall, bang my head into the wall. That's actually happened to me. Not to this wall. I wouldn't dare bang into this wall. I'd put a bunch of knobs in my head. So what am I saying? Completely, what am I saying is find out who you think you are. If you think you are anybody, if you think you're the Buddha, for that matter, anything you think is a lie. Every thought you have is untrue. You should have questions about that. You should, because who else has said that to you? Everything you think is bullshit. You waiting for me to say that's a Sanskrit word? And I'm using a strong word, like there's probably a strong word, but I'm using that word so that you'll think everything I think is not true. It's not true. It's not true. We're not saying there aren't some truths, some aspects of it are true, but we tend to settle for those aspects and forget the whole area that actually is smells. Is actually because we don't like the feeling of knowing that we're having thoughts that are not that have no substance to them. And the basic confusion, the basic problem is that one of the thoughts that we have is that we think we are a solid, separate being from everyone else. Not in the sovereign sense, but in the separated sense. So they're over there, someone else is over here, and we're separate from them. We're better, or when we use our thinking process to determine which way. We don't have as much money as they do. They have more money, they're better looking, they have bigger elbows. Probably not had that thought. Michael.
Is all thinking judgmental?
I don't know. What do you think? That wasn't. Or was it? You think I shouldn't have thought that? Have you ever said that to yourself? I got to stop thinking that.
Yeah.
Yeah, as if you can stop thinking something. And we can't. It's like saying, I'm tired of getting haircuts. I'm just going to stop growing my hair. Well, I mean, it works for me, but of course, I'm sitting up here, so I can say something. Have you noticed how we just have these assumptions about what we have control over? We actually think that we can control things. Sir.
Is there a difference between this thinking you're talking about and our emotions?
Well, I think there's differences, or you wouldn't be able to even talk about it. So there's differences, but there's strong similarity. I'm not sure exactly what the mechanism is there. I mean, there's speculation on this. There's been speculation down through the centuries, from Indian philosophy up through all the Buddhist philosophers, all speculating on the different parts of mind and the way it works. And, we can point you places that you can spend the better part of your life studying that. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. There's lots and lots of concepts about it, thinking. Trungpa Rinpoche said, I like the way you said it, and I often repeat it. That's what I'm doing now. Is thinking, emotions are just high-speed thoughts. No, it's helpful. It's like the slower, the thinking process goes along at a certain rate, but when the emotion gets cranked up, it's like something is so speedy that we can't
Have any control,
handle, huh?
any control?
Or we can't handle it. We just can't. Even experiencing that emotion, it might be too intensely negative, too intensely positive. That matter. Yes.
Are you talking about the relationship to thinking and the relation and observing?
I'm not following. I mean, I could say yes to that question.
It seems to me that all thinking is in the past.
Well, I guess scientifically it is. I've just heard that said recently. Someone pointed that out to me. And what do you think I said? What? Yeah, everything's happening in the past. You can't find the present. You can't even live in the present. It's always past tense. So,
It seems that thinking and thoughts are just going to be part of being a living being. So what is this? What is the importance of thoughts, all thoughts being a lie?
so that you can, by doing that, you can maybe get a little distance from them. Say, well, because if you're having thoughts that you're buying into, and those thoughts are leading you in circles or causing you to worry and fret about things or complain to yourself or accuse others, not so good. Everything is the discovery of the Buddha, the basic discovery of the Buddha is everything is dependently arisen. That means there's not a separate solid being anywhere. If you begin to see that, it's completely hilarious. And at the same time, it's serious because so many people buy into their thoughts in such a way that they torture themselves, they torture others. And if they're in charge of a country, they'll take a whole country to war based on their misunderstanding of what this life is about. Thinking that this is actually real and we have to do something about it. Keep coming.
So are you saying that the condition could exist where thoughts aren't doing that, where they're not
Yeah.
running us around in circles?
Well, sure.
And
The phrase I always use is awareness is king if I'm talking to a man. Awareness is queen if I'm talking to a woman. And if I'm talking to LGBT, then I wait and see what they like me to do.
if
Awareness is queer, I guess.
So if the condition exists where thoughts are not doing that.
Yeah, and thoughts are self-liberated. So thoughts just, they appear and they can't find a criminal anywhere.
It's still going to look like they're doing that, though, isn't it?
It might, yeah. Good one. May still look at, it's going to look just as much like a stage set as it did when you first were born. Remember when you were born?
Really?
Well, think back. You were born and you were introduced into this crazy situation where everybody thought things were real. And as a child, you know they're not real. And then you get conditioned, indoctrinated into this so-called adult world where everybody's so serious about everything. And we believe this, and we believe it so much we'll fight with people. We'll fight for our beliefs, which is something they actually say. Well, you got to stand up for what you believe in. Well, that's just bullshit. Notice the scowl on my face? And I'm not saying, the part of it that I'm saying is is untrue is the way people fasten onto it. I'm not saying you can't do a little bit. That's why Buddhism is called the middle way. Not too tight, not too loose. A little bit of that, but we tend to overdo. We tend to go in and fixate on something because we want a relationship so bad. Ego does not want to be unsure about anything. And if you're unsure about something, then you might go in and complain to yourself about you're a terrible person because you're so unsure. Or you might go the other way, like some famous people we know that think they know everything. Question? Have no monk questions? Have a monk question.
Can you say again what sovereign means?
Did I say what it meant?
Maybe not, or maybe didn't I
I
miss
said
it?
I didn't, and I hadn't looked it up, so I like to use words I don't know what they
So
mean.
can you describe what it is in the context of talking about ego and
Yeah. Ego is a concoction of things. It comes together. It's a bunch of parts that all get together and try to be something. But yet, if anything happens over here, because things are dependent, it's dependent on everything else for its apparent identity. So it's dependent on what you think. If I say, Kozan, you're a stupid idiot. See, and then it feels bad, doesn't it? She knows I don't mean that. But I'm just using that as an example. We're really affected by what people think. Even when something is, we know it's untrue, it's made up. The example I always use is often used as one of a show, like a horror. Some people cannot watch horror movies because they stir up things, even though it's untrue. And then other people like to be stirred up and know that it's not true, and they call that entertainment. It's really fun to watch people get their heads ripped off and chopped with samurai swords, like in The Walking Dead. And it's like, we just can't wait to get, I would get some popcorn, but I don't want to miss this next guy getting his head knocked off. But if you all of a sudden saw that as being real, that was something that actually happened, then it might be a little bit different story or different relationship to the popcorn. What was your question?
what is sovereign in the context?
Sovereign is something that can't be divided. More? Now, I don't know what the dictionary says. You probably have to get a special dictionary for me. Something that can't be divided, something that is completely pristine and pure and without any contamination whatsoever.
So you said what you really are is dependently arisen,
Who
is
is?
not separate.
Who is?
You said what you really are is not separate. So if you're not separate, it seems like you're made up of lots of parts. So how can you be not separate and sovereign at the same time?
Just without any grasping or any fixation. More.
How can anything be sovereign?
I don't know. I thought I just answered that question. That didn't work, so now I'm going to say I don't know, because I see that what you're actually asking me is something it's impossible to answer. You follow me? Don't follow me. Might lead you to a difficult area, walking along the red edge of a cliff. Question?
Is Buddha nature sovereign?
That's the idea. It's your awakened nature. It's not some guy, that lived 2,500 years ago necessarily, but his physical manifestation, he brought this teaching about. So the word Buddha means awakened, the awakened one. What did he awaken to? He awakened to nothing is separate. Everywhere he looked, if nothing is separate, then everywhere he looked, he saw himself. It actually transcended personal identity. which actually allowed him to be totally independent and be a teacher and stand there and tell these 18-year-old monks what to do with their lives. Don't do this, don't do this, don't wash your bowl in the stream. Might lose it. Don't touch women. Might get an erection. Not good for a monk.
How does the relationship to a teacher help a student to see their sovereignty?
That the teaching person it will encourage you to go beyond your own presumed limitations. Will keep encouraging you to just keep going, keep looking at it. Keep looking at it. Don't give up. Yes.
What are limitations?
Like, I can't do this. This is too hard. Or this is the wrong path. I need to find another teacher. This guy's a bozo. It's not that funny. I need, really, like Trunk Permit J, my first teacher referred to the whole scene back in the 60s and 70s era when we were getting into Eastern religion as a spiritual supermarket. Everybody's trying this and trying, going with this teacher and that teacher, and they were all over the place. And there's even more now. Spiritual materialism, trying to use spiritual techniques and so on to get better, get stronger, get higher, get.
What's the contrast between trying to get better and having insight?
Insight doesn't belong to anyone. Can't claim it. There's nothing turning into something else. Insight is nothing is separate. When that happens, that applies to you. And when that's happening, you don't feel like you know anything. If you feel like you know something, this is ego. That's more.
How do you know the difference?
You will. You'll know. Keep going. Go then.
Is it possible to not be sovereign?
It's not possible to not be sovereign, but it's possible to be deluded about that situation and constantly think there's something that needs improvement. Constantly think there's something needs to be done about your emotional states and so on. And continue to abandon your own Buddha nature, abandon the Buddha in the palm of your hand and go off looking for something of value. More?
We recently heard as a method of working with mind, asking the question, am I sovereign?
Yes.
So if you ask yourself the question, am I sovereign? What might come up to?
Depends on who's asking. More? There's plenty there.
How would asking that identify something?
It's possible. Usually to do it for ourselves, we're tied up in a situation. It's very difficult to work on that kind of a process. Just like meditation, it's very difficult to be a meditator without a teacher, without some kind of teaching dynamic, without a community where you're working with other people that are helping you work on this, because it's difficult to do. Easy to get sidetracked, easy to go off into spiritual materialism and go in circles. More?
It seems like it would be begging us to look for something that makes us not sovereign, but it's hard to see.
So the idea is we're not talking about looking for something, we're trying to see what is already there. When I say that, I'm saying, you're looking at me, see what's there. You look at the floor, when you sit down, you look at the wall, you're training yourself to see what is in front of you. It's not that some wonderful thing's going to happen looking at the wall. Probably not. It's pretty boring. But by training yourself to just see, and not necessarily fuel any kind of adding, or subtracting or dividing or judging, to actually look at what happens. This way, when you get up off your cushion and you go into your everyday life post-meditation, then the possibility of seeing what is fundamentally there, minus your concepts about it, minus your ideas, your projections, your beliefs, your opinions, which is see just the raw material of your experience. See more clearly what's right in front of you, instead of I see an Afro-American, or I see a Republican, or I see a German Shepherd, or I see a
A dog lover.
I wasn't going to say that. I guess what I'm saying is, and that would work. Just some kind of concept that we see the concept, rather than what is actually there. If you see what is actually there, you won't recognize it in the same way that you do if you're working out of concepts. You'll actually not know what you're looking at. An example of that I've given before, which I can use again today. If somebody comes, we're sitting in a room and somebody comes in the room that maybe we know them a little bit, but we're sitting in a restaurant, a cafeteria someplace, and we look up, we see somebody that we maybe met once or twice, maybe talked to a little bit, and they have a really, like they're scowling something, and they look at us while they're scowling. If you can just look at that without going anywhere with it, just see John or Mary, whomever is scowling, like they're unhappy. But what do we do? No, they're scowling at me. Something I've said or done. Why are they mad at me? It must be because of what I said yesterday, or this or that, to jump to any kind of conclusion. And since the person walking in, I'm not just talking about that situation, but any kind of situation, a situation where they come up and just maybe they're tied up in some other something else they've got on their mind. They're abrupt with you, like you come up and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" Say, "Hang on a minute." And they go and they walk away from you and walk somewhere else. And you think, "Well, thank you very much." That's not very nice, or disrespecting me, or whatever. This is what ego does. It cannot handle not knowing for a microsecond. And what we'll do is we do it over and over and over again. If you become a meditator, if you continue to meditate, you are going to be in for it, because you're going to have to witness yourself doing that over and over and over until you just don't do it anymore, because you're so clear about what you do. You're so clear about your tendency to, rush to judgment, as the saying goes. You just think that somebody has done something to you. Probably not. Yes.
Do those thought patterns continue despite the clarity?
Yes, they do. And that's why it's difficult, because the ego, which is aligned with the awareness and laminated to the awareness, keeps looking for those to stop. I've been meditating a lot. I meditated a lot. I was in a retreat for 10 days. I meditate all the time. I went, I read lots of books. I've studied with lots of teachers, or whatever kind of credential we want to claim. And so then when the negative thoughts keep coming up, because we think it's the actual thoughts, we think it's the thoughts themselves. We are attached to the forms. We're attached to the things. We're attached to positive and negative and neutral. And we don't look at that which is actually doing the thinking, or doing the perceiving. The identity itself is what is supporting that. Hi, Ruby.
Wow.
Wait, more. Take it just a.
So if there's clarity and the thought patterns are continuing, and you're seeing the fallacy in it,
Yes.
then what?
Nothing. You're not really seeing the fallacy. The thought patterns are self-liberated, as is said. the Tibetan tradition. They don't have they're free. They come and they're gone because there's nobody home. It's like somebody comes in your house looking for you, goes right on out the back door. They leave. Because there's nobody there. Where's the owner of this house? Sorry. She's sovereign. No longer having a location. No longer separate from anything.
Might you still act
Yes.
out of that?
Yes, you would act out of your awareness would be so expansive, not from the point of view of ego. It wouldn't be like a feeling like, oh my, I have such an expansive awareness. It's just that your awareness would be everywhere. And so therefore you would serve what needed to be served and you would take out what needed to be taken out. So you might be extremely sweet and kind and supportive here. You might be over here kicking the shit out of somebody. And I'm not kidding. But you can't do that as a kind of an ego, like I see things so clearly that I think I'm going to go send a missile over to Boko Haram or something like that. That's a complete misunderstanding. That would not happen that way at all. So there's a willingness to have the negative emotions and not do anything with it. Willing to live, to be in that open house. And have whatever negative, positive, neutral thoughts come through, and they can't find an owner. Thoughts without a thinker, it has been said. Sovereign. Buddha nature. The fundamental nature of reality is light. If you want to pin it on something, it's like tail on the donkey with no donkey. You recognize that, I can tell. Yes,
Shane from California has a question.
yes.
He asks, do you think different people experience their own unique perceptions of their own Buddha nature?
I don't know. Why don't you paraphrase what he said?
Does each person define Buddha nature in their own way?
Until they realize it, yes. And when they realize it, then not separate. Everywhere, a person who's realized that, everywhere they look, they see the Buddha. And they basically see the Buddha everywhere, not in every person, but in every object, everything they see Buddha nature. And it's not some kind of wonderful, glorious feeling where they're dancing around throwing flowers. It's very ordinary, flat, ordinary. And they see it in the midst of someone who's suffering. They see the Buddha nature there in that person who's suffering. And there's great respect for that person to not interfere with their sovereignty and try to tell them what to do or what not to do. Don't interfere. Don't meddle with anyone's life or their karma at all without their permission. Unless they're 8 years old and you're their mom, in which case you're going to have to do what you're told for a while. But later, you get to do what you want, kind of.
Does realization still manifest through our karma?
Say more.
Just thinking that if two people realized the way in which it came out of them, still come out of their karma? I mean, would you see a contrast based on their personalities?
If I follow what you're asking me, let me say it this way and see if this is what you're asking. A person would still, their karma would still be in place, and some people might still continue to sell used cars. And another person might stop doing something like that and do something completely different. So I wouldn't think that you can't really track a person, particularly by how they're acting. A person might necessarily not act, might not start teaching the Dharma or something necessarily, or they might. If that's that what you're saying, or is there something?
I guess, yeah, I think so. I think something along the lines of you realize through practicing shikantaza or you realize through practicing tantra, it seems that even that little karma from this lifetime of having been taught how to do it a certain way it still may manifest through that. Or even if two people realize in the same lineage, I'm wondering if that teaching style that we see has something to do with their karma still.
Yeah. I think it does. It's the karma's already there. So you've already been born. You're already here. You're already 6 feet tall, and you're a male or you're a female, or you have a particular skill with a particular thing or a particular natural ability to do something. Then probably that realization is not going to just abandon that. You know, that like my teacher Trungpa Rinpoche was a great poet. His writing is incredible. And obviously a great teacher, but his singing voice was horrid. You know, I can't even imitate it. It was so terrible. It sounded like it sounded like somebody had a chipmunk and was squeezing the chipmunk. But at the same time, the chipmunk was trying really hard to put on a good show. It's really difficult. There's recordings of him singing. But the amazing thing about it is my connection with him and other people's connection was so, we all loved him so much that he could hardly do any wrong. You know, so everything he did was a manifestation of his teaching. So when people just, they loved that he sang so horribly. And he didn't mind singing. They asked him to sing, so he sang. But I'm actually quite a bit better, according to you, I'm a better singer than I am a dancer, as I recall you said. You still feel that way?
I haven't heard you sing or seen you dance in a while, so I don't know
Okay.
how your skills have improved.
It's a safe response. We can have another, let's do Sheldon here. So.
You said if we saw something for what it was without concepts, we wouldn't even know what it was.
You know, you would see it, you'd know what it was. I mean, I'm looking at you and I'm seeing you say a blue sweatshirt on, and I'm seeing you and there's a camera. So you kind of know what it is, but that's kind of secondary. It's the first thing is actually what is there. Everything you're perceiving through your sense fields, and instead of seeing something over there, you realize it's happening. The occurrence is like nothing happening. It's like nothing is happening because what it is always just not separate from you.
Yeah, I get the feeling that would be confusing.
It is confusing to ego. That's why ego keeps backing off from that and closing up the hand with the Buddha in it. I'm not going to look at that. That's too confusing because the message of the Buddha is like a funeral announcement to ego. That's the downside, is a funeral announcement. The upside, if you see it, is ego is not real, so it can't die. It doesn't go anywhere. It might just hang around and kind of haunt you. Or not. Okay. Short question, Michael? No?
Not now.
Very good. We can dedicate. All right. Thank you.
In the back of your red chant books is our dedication of merit, the last page. Also remind you about our donation boxes out in the hallway. And this Saturday, we're going to have a Shuso ceremony for Sebason's son Mason, and also for Chiazon.
What's that?
We'll tell you later.
What time?
11 and 3.
May the miracles penetrate into all places so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiro San Shi Shihu Shizon Bu Sa Moko Sa Moko Jahurumi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokokoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.